I've always believed that a good marriage is built on trust, routine, and the quiet comfort of companionship. For years I thought I had all three with Lisa. We met in college, two young dreamers with a shared vision of a simple, happy life. I was drawn to her laughter, the way she could light up a room without trying. She said she loved how steady I was, how I made her feel safe. We married at 24, bought a modest home, and built a life that, for all intents and purposes, seemed perfect. Lisa worked in marketing, a job that kept her busy but never distant. I was in software development, a steady career that allowed me to work from home most days. It was a comfortable setup. We had dinner together nearly every night, shared inside jokes, and spent weekends watching movies or taking short trips to the countryside. We talked about kids but never felt the urgency. Maybe next year, she'd say, and I'd agree, thinking we had all the time in the world. Looking back, I wonder when things started to change. Was it 5 years ago? Longer? There were no clear signs, nothing I could put my finger on. Lisa was always good at maintaining the illusion. I suppose that's why it took so long for me to notice. The late nights at the office had been gradual, first once or twice a month, then more frequently. I never questioned it. She was good at what she did, always chasing a promotion, and I was proud of her. I can pinpoint the first moment of unease. A little over 4 years ago, she started locking her laptop. It wasn't overt, just a casual shift in behavior. Before, she'd leave it open on the kitchen counter while cooking, answering emails in between chopping vegetables. Then, one day, I noticed that she closed it whenever she walked away. I asked her about it once, jokingly. She laughed, saying, "Work's getting strict on security. IT's making us all paranoid." I believed her. There were other little things. A new gym membership that she suddenly became religious about. The increase in weekend girls' trips that left me home alone. The sudden, inexplicable glow about her, like she was living in a secret world just outside my reach. But I brushed it off. I trusted Lisa. She was my wife. I should have questioned more. The nights she came home smelling of a different cologne. The times I'd wake up at midnight and find her downstairs, staring at her laptop screen, quickly shutting it when she heard me coming. The shift in intimacy, still present, but more calculated, more like something she was offering to maintain balance rather than desire. I told myself we were just going through a rough patch, that life had a way of making even the best relationships feel stale for a while. I started planning a vacation for us, thinking maybe a getaway would bring back what we used to have. I had no idea what was lurking beneath the surface. The first real crack in my certainty appeared on a rainy Tuesday evening. Lisa had told me she was meeting some old college friends for dinner. She texted around 9 p.m. saying it had gone later than expected and that she'd be home soon. An hour passed. Then another. At midnight she finally walked through the door, hair slightly disheveled, the smell of wine and something else, something musky, unfamiliar, clinging to her clothes. She greeted me with a sheepish smile, a kiss on the cheek, and an apology about losing track of time. Something inside me told me to press, to ask where she had really been. But I didn't. I nodded, told her it was fine, and watched as she slipped upstairs to shower. When she returned, she curled up next to me in bed as if nothing had happened. Moments like these became more frequent. The girls' nights that stretched until the early hours of the morning. The unexplained weekend work trips that hadn't existed before. The nervous energy that sometimes crackled around her when she checked her phone. I wanted to believe nothing was wrong. I needed to believe it. It wasn't until I ran into her best friend, Megan, at the grocery store that I first felt the shift from suspicion to something darker. Megan was friendly, always had been, but when I casually mentioned Lisa's trip to Chicago the previous weekend, her expression faltered, just for a second. A flash of confusion, quickly masked. "Oh, right. Yeah, work's been keeping her super busy," she said too quickly, before changing the subject. That moment stuck with me. I tried to ignore it, to shove it into the back of my mind where doubts go to rot, but it festered. A week later, I decided to do something I'd never done in all our years together. I checked her laptop. It was late. Lisa had fallen asleep beside me, her soft, rhythmic breathing filling the quiet space of our bedroom. I slipped out of bed carefully, padding toward the home office where she always left her laptop. The screen was dark, but when I lifted the lid, the password prompt greeted me like a locked door I'd never tried to open. For a second, I hesitated. This wasn't who I was. I wasn't the kind of husband who snooped. But then I remembered Megan's hesitation, the late nights, the changes in Lisa's behavior. I typed in her usual password. Incorrect. A cold knot formed in my stomach. She had changed it. I closed the laptop and walked back to bed, my mind spinning. The thought settled over me like a weight. Lisa was hiding something. And whatever it was big enough to keep locked away. From that night on, something inside me shifted. Doubt became a constant companion, gnawing at the edges of my thoughts, turning even the most innocent moments into potential evidence. Lisa's behavior wasn't dramatically different, but now that I was looking, I saw things I had been blind to before. The way she clutched her phone a little tighter when I walked by. The way she always placed it face down on the table. The way she started showering immediately after getting home from her late nights out. At first, I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was reading too much into things, but the feeling never left. The more I noticed, the more obvious it became that she was hiding something from me. I started paying attention in ways I never had before. I began noting the days she left the house, the times she returned, the excuses she gave, and soon, the patterns emerged. There were specific days, Wednesdays and Fridays, when she always had a reason to be out late. Specific weekends when she had work trips that didn't match the ones she used to take. Then there were the physical changes. Lisa had always been attractive, always taken care of herself, but this was something different. She was hitting the gym 5 days a week now, something she had never done before. She had started buying new lingerie, yet I never saw her wear any of it for me. She spent hours scrolling through clothing sites, ordering expensive dresses and high heels, outfits that never made an appearance in our home. At first, I thought she was just going through a phase, a midlife transformation of sorts, but the truth hovered just beneath the surface, waiting for me to acknowledge it. She was different. Lighter. Happier. But it wasn't because of me. I kept trying to push the thoughts away, convincing myself I was being paranoid. Maybe work really was stressful. Maybe she was just focusing on herself. Maybe, after years together, I had stopped paying enough attention to her, and now she was just trying to rediscover a part of herself she had lost. I wanted to believe that, because the alternative was unbearable. The alternative meant that the woman I had built my life with had become a stranger in plain sight, moving through our home like an actress playing a role, waiting for the curtain to close so she could step back into her real life. It made me feel sick. I tried to reconnect with her, tried to ignore the doubts creeping into my mind, but something had changed between us, something I couldn't reach no matter how hard I tried. One evening, determined to break the invisible wall forming between us, I planned a date night. We went to her favorite restaurant, a small, cozy Italian place where we had celebrated anniversaries in the past. She dressed up, looking as effortlessly beautiful as ever, and for a brief moment, I convinced myself that I was imagining everything. She smiled, made conversation, laughed at my jokes, but there was something distant in her eyes, like she was only half present. I watched her closely, searching for any sign that she still saw me the way she used to, still loved me the way she had in the beginning. I wanted to believe that whatever was happening could be fixed. And then, halfway through the meal, her phone lit up on the table. It was just for a second, a soft vibration, a brief flash of light, but it was enough. Lisa glanced at it, quick and instinctive, before catching herself and looking away. In that split moment, I saw everything I needed to see. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way she pressed her lips together as if suppressing a reaction, the way her fingers twitched like she was resisting the urge to reach for it. My stomach turned to lead. This wasn't work. I knew it the moment I saw her expression, the flicker of something in her eyes that she tried too hard to hide. I forced myself to stay calm, to smile like I hadn't noticed anything, but my pulse was hammering in my ears. She picked up her glass of wine, took a slow sip, and when she put it down, she met my gaze with a bright, casual smile that felt painfully rehearsed. "Sorry, work stuff," she said, flipping the phone over so the screen faced down. I nodded, pretending I believed her, pretending I was still the fool she had been playing for however long this had been going on. But something inside me broke at that moment. The doubt I had tried so hard to suppress was no longer doubt. It was certainty. Lisa was cheating on me. And the worst part? I had no idea how long it had been happening. Certainty brought a new kind of pain. The doubt, as agonizing as it had been, at least left room for hope, but now that hope was dead. Lisa had betrayed me. The realization settled in my chest like a stone, and for the first time in our marriage, I felt completely disconnected from the woman I had spent years building a life with. But knowing wasn't enough. I needed to see it for myself. I needed proof, not just to confront her, but because some part of me still wanted to believe that I was wrong. That night, after Lisa had fallen asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I couldn't ask her outright. If she had been lying to me for this long, she wouldn't suddenly confess out of guilt. I needed something concrete, something undeniable. The next morning, I acted normal, pretending I wasn't watching her every move. She kissed me on the cheek before heading out, telling me she had meetings all day and would be home late. I smiled and told her to have a good day, but the moment she walked out the door, I went straight to her office. The laptop was there, locked as always, but her work bag sat open on the desk. My hands trembled as I unzipped it and searched through the contents. Files, notebooks, chargers, nothing suspicious. And then, at the bottom of the bag, her old tablet. Lisa rarely used it anymore. She had a new laptop, a new phone, but this? This had been gathering dust for years. I turned it on, my breath shallow, and to my disbelief, there was no password. The home screen loaded instantly, filled with outdated apps and old messages. My fingers hovered over the screen, unsure where to start. Emails? Calendar? Photos? I hesitated before clicking on the file storage app. There was a folder near the top labeled Personal. It seemed innocent enough, but when I opened it, my stomach clenched. There were dozens of videos. Some dating back years. My hands turned clammy as I clicked on the most recent one, recorded just 3 nights ago, the night she had told me she was out with friends. The video loaded, and instantly the breath was stolen from my lungs. Lisa was in a hotel room, the dim lighting casting soft shadows on the bed. She was wearing a dress I had never seen before, her hair styled in a way she never did for me. And then, a man stepped into the frame. A man I didn't recognize. My world shattered as I watched her kiss him, slow and deliberate, her hands pulling at his shirt, her body pressing against his in a way that made me feel sick. The video continued, leaving no room for misinterpretation. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I clicked out of it, my heart slamming against my ribs, bow rising in my throat. But I couldn't stop. I had to know how deep this went. I scrolled through the videos, scanning the dates. 5 years. She had been doing this for 5 years. My hands shook as I opened another video, this one from last year. A different man. Another hotel room. Another betrayal. I felt like I was drowning, like the air in the room had turned to poison. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a one-time lapse in judgment. Lisa had been living a double life, coming home to me after nights spent with other men, looking me in the eye and telling me she loved me while secretly recording herself with strangers. My mind struggled to process it. 5 years. Our anniversaries, our vacations, our quiet nights on the couch, how much of it had been a lie? How many times had I kissed her, touched her, held her, not knowing she had been with someone else just days before? I sat there, gripping the tablet so tightly my knuckles turned white. I wanted to destroy it, to smash it against the wall, to erase the images burned into my brain. But I didn't. Because now, I had proof. Now, I had something she couldn't deny. And as the initial shock gave way to cold, simmering rage, I realized one thing with absolute certainty. Lisa thought she had been in control of this game. She was wrong. The rage didn't come all at once. At first, it was just numbness, a hollow kind of disbelief that left me frozen in place, staring at the tablet as if it could somehow explain why. Why she had done this. Why she had chosen to betray me over and over again for 5 years. Why she had recorded it, stored it like some kind of sick trophy collection. The weight of it pressed down on me, suffocating, threatening to crush whatever was left of the man I had been before I pressed play on that first video. I don't know how long I sat there, but eventually, the numbness cracked, and something darker seeped through. The pain was unbearable, but underneath it, crawling beneath my skin, was the realization that I couldn't just sit there and drown in it. Lisa had played me for a fool, lied to my face every day for 5 years. She had taken something sacred and twisted it into something filthy. And the worst part? She had never intended for me to find out. She would have kept doing it. She would have kept smiling at me, kissing me, letting me hold her, all while sneaking off to hotel rooms with strangers. She would have kept pretending to be my wife while living a second life right under my nose. I clenched my fists so tightly my nails dug into my palms. No. She didn't get to do this to me and walk away unscathed. I wouldn't be another clueless husband who found out, and just quietly divorced his cheating wife while she played the victim, splitting assets and moving on like nothing happened. She had already taken 5 years of my life from me. I wasn't going to let her take anything else. I forced myself to focus, to push the sickening images from my mind and think clearly. Lisa was too careful, too good at lying. If I confronted her now, she would find a way to manipulate the situation, twist it, turn the guilt around on me. She would cry, say it was a mistake, maybe even try to tell me that what I saw wasn't what it looked like. No, I needed to be smarter. I needed to make sure there was no way she could deny it. And more than that, I needed to make her feel what I was feeling. I closed the tablet and tucked it back into her bag exactly as I had found it. My heart was still hammering, my hands still shaking, but my mind was clearer now. Lisa had been playing a long game, hiding her infidelities in plain sight, but she had made one fatal mistake: she had underestimated me. She thought I would never suspect her. She thought she had everything under control. But she was wrong. For the next few days, I pretended like nothing had changed. I went through the motions, greeted her when she came home, asked about her day, kissed her goodnight. It was harder than I could have ever imagined. Every time I touched her, every time I heard her laugh, every time she looked me in the eye and lied to me, I had to fight the urge to expose her, to tell her I knew everything. But I wasn't ready yet. I needed time. I needed a plan. Lisa had recorded her affairs. She had been arrogant enough to document every betrayal, thinking it was her little secret. But secrets don't stay hidden forever. And if she wanted to play games, then I was going to show her just how it felt to be on the other side of one. This wasn't going to end the way she thought it would. I moved carefully, deliberately. Lisa had spent 5 years covering her tracks, lying to my face, pretending to love me while she slipped away to hotel rooms and recorded her betrayal like some kind of twisted keepsake. She had been patient. I would be too. For the next week, I did nothing out of the ordinary. I played the role of the devoted, unsuspecting husband while quietly gathering everything I needed. I backed up every video from her tablet onto a secure drive, copied text messages and emails from her accounts while she slept, and compiled a timeline of every business trip, every girls' night, every lie she had ever told me. I didn't just want proof. I wanted the whole picture, every disgusting detail laid bare. I needed to know exactly how deep this betrayal went, how long she had been making a fool out of me. And the more I uncovered, the more I realized that Lisa had never once hesitated. She had been living a double life without a second thought. The routine became suffocating. Every morning, she kissed me goodbye before heading off to work, her touch now feeling like sandpaper against my skin. Every night, she smiled at me over dinner, acting like the woman I had loved for so many years, when in reality, she was nothing more than a stranger wearing my wife's face. I wondered if she ever thought about the men she had been with while she sat across from me, if she replayed those nights in her mind while pretending to be my wife. The thought made my stomach turn, but I held it all in. She wasn't going to see me break. I waited for the right opportunity to put my plan into motion. I didn't want an argument, an emotional confrontation where she could spin the truth and try to manipulate me. No, I wanted something undeniable. I wanted her to experience the gut-wrenching horror of being blindsided, of realizing that her perfect little secret life had just come crashing down around her. She had made a game out of our marriage. Now, I was going to make a game out of her downfall. I set up hidden cameras in the house, not because I expected her to bring anyone here, she was too careful for that, but because I wanted to document her reactions when the moment came. I wanted to see the exact second when she realized everything was over, when the mask slipped and the real Lisa, the one she had kept hidden for years, finally came to the surface. I planned every step meticulously, ensuring that there would be no way for her to deny, deflect, or escape. And then, the perfect opportunity presented itself. Lisa had another work trip coming up, another 2-day excuse to disappear and indulge in her secret life. She didn't know that I had already hacked into her email, that I had seen the confirmation for the hotel reservation under a fake name. She didn't know that I had already watched hours of footage of her with the man she was planning to meet. She didn't know that I had already booked my own room in the same hotel, just a few doors down. She had spent years playing me for a fool. Now it was my turn. Lisa packed light for her business trip. A small suitcase, a designer purse, and a confident smile as she kissed me goodbye that morning. It was almost laughable how easy this was for her, how little guilt she carried. 5 years of lies, and yet she still played the role of the loving wife without hesitation. As I watched her walk out the door, I felt no sadness, no heartbreak. Those emotions had burned away, leaving only cold, focused resolve. I waited for an hour before leaving the house, just in case she had second thoughts or needed to grab something she had forgotten. But she didn't return. She had no reason to. She thought she had fooled me, just as she always had. I drove to the hotel, my mind eerily calm as I checked into my own room under an alias. The reservation had been made days in advance. I had thought about every detail, prepared for every possibility. There would be no mistakes. Lisa's room was on the 7th floor. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, needing to keep my body moving, needing the momentum to push me forward. When I reached her door, I didn't hesitate. I had already seen the reservation details, knew exactly which room she would be in. I pulled out my phone, connected to the small hidden camera I had placed in the hallway earlier, and pressed record. I knocked. A short pause. Then footsteps. When the door opened, my breath slowed, my focus narrowing. Lisa stood there, wrapped in a hotel robe, her hair damp from a shower. Behind her, in the dimly lit room, I saw him, the man from the videos. She froze. For the first time in 5 years, Lisa's confidence cracked. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Her eyes flicked to my face, searching for something, anything that would tell her how much I knew. I let the silence stretch, watching as realization dawned on her, as the blood drained from her face. The power shifted in that moment, the control she had wielded so effortlessly for years now slipping through her fingers. I stepped forward, forcing her to move back as I walked into the room. The other man, the stranger she had chosen over me time and time again, sat on the edge of the bed, frozen in place like a deer caught in headlights. He wasn't expecting this. He wasn't ready. But I wasn't here for him. I was here for her. I turned to Lisa, letting my eyes drag over the room, the half-empty wine glasses, the unmade bed, the lingering scent of expensive cologne that didn't belong to me. I wanted her to see what I saw, to feel the weight of her choices crushing down on her. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the folder of videos, and turned the screen toward her. 5 years, I said, my voice colder than I had ever heard it. I've seen it all. Lisa's breath hitched, her hands shaking at her sides. Her lips parted, an excuse forming, a desperate attempt to claw her way out of this. But there was nothing left to say. The proof was undeniable. The game was over. I didn't yell. I didn't break down. I simply turned, walked to the door, and left her standing there in the wreckage of her own making. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. I didn't look back as I walked out of the hotel room. I didn't need to. The image of Lisa standing there, pale and trembling, was burned into my mind, and that was enough. The weight that had been pressing down on me for days, weeks, months was gone. In its place was something sharper, something colder. Satisfaction wasn't the right word, not yet. This wasn't over. Not until she felt what I had felt. Not until she lost everything the way I had. I took the elevator down to the lobby, moving through the polished hallways like a ghost, unseen and unnoticed. I had already set everything in motion. The camera hidden in the hallway had recorded everything. The look on Lisa's face when she saw me, the moment of recognition, the panic that flickered in her eyes. It wasn't enough for me to know the truth. She needed to see it from my perspective. She needed to watch herself crumble, to understand exactly how exposed she was. I left the hotel and drove home, the city lights blurring past the windshield. The house felt different when I walked in, like the walls no longer belonged to me, like the air itself had turned stale. Lisa had tainted this place, brought her lies into every corner, turned it into something hollow. But I wasn't the one who would be leaving. She was. I sat down at my desk, plugged in my phone, and transferred the footage I had just taken. It joined the dozens of other videos, a perfect collection of every lie, every betrayal, every moment she thought she had gotten away with. Then I crafted my final move. I compiled everything, the videos, the screenshots of her messages, the hotel receipts she thought were hidden. I stitched it together into something undeniable, something airtight. A single file, neatly packaged and waiting to be opened. Then I set up an email. Lisa. Watch this. I saw everything. Don't come home. I attached the file and hit send. I sat back in my chair, my fingers gripping the armrests. The wait was short. 15 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Lisa was calling. I let it ring. A second call. A third. Then came the messages. Baby, please, let's talk. I swear it's not what you think. Just let me explain. Please pick up. I'm coming home. I stood up, walked to the front door, and locked it. Then I waited. An hour later, her car pulled into the driveway. I watched from the window as she hurried up the steps, her hands fumbling for her keys. When the lock didn't turn, she knocked. Then pounded. Then called my name. I opened the door just enough to look at her. Her face was streaked with tears, her makeup smudged. I had never seen her like this before, not even during our worst fights. She looked lost. Broken. Good. You don't live here anymore, I said, my voice even. She shook her head, stepping forward like she could somehow undo everything if she just got inside. Please let me talk to you. I didn't let her finish. I tossed a manila envelope onto the porch. Divorce papers. Already signed. Already filed. Take it and go, I said. She stared at me, her lips trembling. Then, slowly, she reached down and picked up the envelope, holding it like it was something fragile, something toxic. You don't mean this, she whispered. I stepped back and shut the door in her face. Lisa had spent 5 years betraying me. 5 years recording her infidelities, keeping them like souvenirs. But now, she had something else to remember. The moment she lost everything. And unlike her, I didn't need to record it. I'd never forget it. The silence in the house was deafening. No more late-night whispers from Lisa's phone, no more fake smiles, no more lies hidden behind tired excuses. For the first time in 5 years, I could breathe. She was gone. But even as the weight of her betrayal started to lift, a different kind of heaviness settled in its place. The kind that came with knowing I had wasted years of my life on someone who never deserved them. I didn't hear from her the next day. Or the day after. The calls had stopped after that night on the porch when she realized I wasn't going to let her weasel her way out of this. The texts slowed, then ceased altogether. I should have felt relief, but I wasn't done yet. Lisa had spent half a decade humiliating me, treating me like a fool. She thought she could just disappear and lick her wounds in private. But she had forgotten something. She wasn't the only one who had proof. I logged into my email, scrolling past the unread messages from Lisa, and opened the one I had prepared. A second email, sent to a different list of recipients. Her colleagues. Her boss. Her family. A carefully worded message with a single attachment, the same file I had sent her, the proof of everything. I had debated whether to do it. Whether it was too cruel. Whether it made me just as bad as her. But then I thought about all the years she had come home to me, still glowing from the touch of another man, all the times she had kissed me with lips that had just been on someone else. No, I wasn't the villain here. She was. And now, the world would see her for what she truly was. I hit send. By noon, my phone started buzzing again. I ignored it. By 3, I had messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Mutual friends. Some of her co-workers. Even her sister. Most of them weren't defending her. They were in shock, disgusted, horrified. Some of them apologized to me, told me they had no idea. Others just wanted to know why. I didn't respond. I didn't owe them anything. Then, at exactly 5:42 p.m., Lisa finally called. I stared at the screen for a long moment before answering. Her voice was different. Not the confident, lying woman I had known. Not the manipulative version of her that I had learned to see through. She was shaking, barely able to form words. "You ruined my life," she choked out. I let the silence stretch between us. Then I said calmly, "No, Lisa. You did that all by yourself." She tried to beg, tried to bargain. She said she had lost her job, that her family wouldn't speak to her. That she had nowhere to go. I didn't care. I told her she should have thought about that before she decided to spend 5 years screwing strangers while pretending to be my wife. I hung up before she could say another word. That was the last time I ever heard Lisa's voice. I had won. But the funny thing about revenge? It doesn't bring peace. It doesn't fix the years that were stolen from you. Lisa was gone, her life in ruins, but I was still standing in the wreckage she had left behind. Alone. And no matter how much justice I had served, I still had to figure out how to move forward. And that part, I realized, wasn't going to be easy. Lisa was nothing more than a ghost now. Her name became something people whispered, a cautionary tale among our old friends, a scandal that her former colleagues quickly distanced themselves from. She had been wiped from the life we built together, leaving behind only the wreckage of what I had thought was a happy marriage. But the thing about destruction? It doesn't just erase the past, it leaves ruins, and you have to decide what to do with them. At first, I didn't know what to do with mine. The house was too quiet. The routines we had built, the shared spaces, even the damn coffee mugs in the kitchen, they all reminded me of her, of the life I had spent years believing in. I had kicked her out, stripped her of everything, but I was still left with the echoes of a lie that had stretched on for 5 years. I thought that getting revenge would bring me closure, that watching her life crumble the way she had dismantled mine would give me the peace I deserved. But the truth was, when the dust settled, all I felt was emptiness. For weeks, I moved through my days in a haze. I went to work, I ate, I slept, but it all felt mechanical, like I was just going through the motions of being alive. I had spent so much time consumed by anger, by the need to make her suffer, that I hadn't thought about what came after. There was no roadmap for rebuilding after something like this. No set of instructions for how to erase the image of your wife with another man, for how to stop replaying every conversation and wondering how much of it had been a lie. The nights were the worst. That was when the thoughts crept in, whispering doubts and regrets into the silence. Had I wasted too much time? Had I let her take too much of me? Even though I had been the one to end it, to kick her out and expose her for what she was, I still felt like the victim. And that feeling disgusted me. Lisa had already taken years from me. I refused to let her take a second more. So, I started making changes. I sold the house, refusing to live another day in a place that had been tainted by her presence. I cut off the mutual friends who had known and done nothing, who had turned a blind eye to her affairs while still shaking my hand and asking about our marriage. I burned every remnant of her, every photograph, every memory that tied me to the woman I had once loved. If I was going to move on, I needed to do it completely. But erasing someone from your life doesn't erase the scars they leave behind. Even as I rebuilt, I found myself second-guessing people's words, analyzing their actions, waiting for the lie hidden beneath the surface. I didn't trust easily anymore. I wasn't sure if I ever would again. And maybe that was the real consequence of Lisa's betrayal, not the loss of our marriage, not the humiliation of being played for a fool, but the way it had changed me. Still, I refused to let her win. She had stolen too much from me already. If I had to relearn how to trust, how to live without the weight of her deception, then so be it. I had torn her life apart, but now it was time to build my own. And this time, it would be real. Moving on wasn't a single moment. It wasn't a decision I made one day and stuck to without struggle. It was a slow process, filled with setbacks, anger, and moments where I still found myself staring at the ceiling late at night, remembering everything I wished I could forget. But little by little, I reclaimed my life. Selling the house had been the right decision. It wasn't just about getting rid of a place filled with memories of Lisa. It was about starting fresh, untangling myself from everything she had touched. I moved into a modern apartment in the city, smaller, simpler, but entirely mine. No ghosts of our past, no reminders of what had been lost. Just me, and the space to figure out what came next. I threw myself into work, into the hobbies I had neglected during my marriage. I started going to the gym, not to compete with the younger men Lisa had chosen over me, but to remind myself that I was still here, still standing, still capable of building something new. I reconnected with friends who had nothing to do with Lisa, people I had lost touch with over the years. I went out more, let myself experience life without the weight of betrayal pressing down on me. And for the first time in a long time, I started to feel like myself again. Lisa, on the other hand, had disappeared. After the fallout from her exposure, she had lost everything: her job, her reputation, the respect of her family. I didn't know where she had gone, and I didn't care. I had no desire to check up on her, no curiosity about how she was coping. She had made her choices. Now she had to live with them. Dating was harder than I expected. I wasn't naive enough to think I could just jump into something new without baggage. Trust didn't come easy anymore. Every time I met someone, there was always a lingering thought in the back of my mind: was she hiding something? Was she another Lisa waiting to happen? It wasn't fair to them, and it wasn't fair to me. So I took it slow. I went on dates but didn't rush into anything. I let myself enjoy the company of new women without needing it to be more than that. Then, one day, I met someone different. It wasn't dramatic or earth-shattering. It was a simple conversation at a bookstore, a shared laugh over a mutual favorite author. She was kind, funny, and most importantly, honest. There was no pretense, no calculated charm designed to manipulate. It was easy, effortless in a way I had forgotten relationships could be. I didn't tell her about Lisa right away. She didn't need to know the details of my past to understand who I was now. But eventually, the truth came out, and instead of pity or awkwardness, she just listened. And that was enough. I wasn't healed overnight. I didn't wake up one morning and suddenly forget the betrayal, the years of lies. But I learned something important. Lisa had taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let her take my future too. For the first time in years I felt free. And that, more than any revenge or exposure, was the real victory.